that sounds good. All right, my name is Adam Penna, and I'm here to continue the conversation in 3D printing and additive manufacturing. And I'm very happy to have Lazarus 3D here today. And I just wanted to pull a little clip that I took off of their own website because I think it encapsulates who they are. But it's a revolutionary company that is changing the way complex medical surgeries are practiced and performed. And very interesting. We have the head of the team here, both Smriti and Jacques here today. And so welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thanks, Adam. We're excited.
Yeah, wow. Just the medical field in general is just so fascinating. And obviously with 3D printing, the way that you're approaching it, we talked, a few weeks back and how things were going. And from that conversation, so many things were going through my head about what I've seen in the past with actually anatomic models and patient-specific medical devices, but being able to actually customize and look at how you're performing a surgery with an actual heart or anything that you're working with from inside the body that you can 3D print is just like, wow. And not only not only are you doing that, but you're doing it with your own 3D printers and your own materials. You've developed everything. And yeah, so I'm fascinated and it's amazing. So I guess, how has that journey been? I guess, Jacques, maybe you can talk about a lot about the early days and what's been happening to get you here, but happy to have both of you here. So thank you.
Yeah.
Well, the key to this is that this is vitally important. So there were studies that came out from, for example, Johns Hopkins, showing that about 300,000 Americans per year die from medical errors. That indicates it's the third largest cause of disease in the United States. And people don't talk about it a lot, and part of the reason is that there aren't really good solutions. We have to train the next generation of surgeons. Right now, they have no way to practice a lot of complex procedures other than doing it on you and me. And if you take an inexperienced person and they're doing brain surgery, sometimes they're gonna make a mistake. How can we possibly combat that? Well, we dedicated our time on nights and weekends while we were working on our PhD to find a solution. We've been messing around with 3D printers and we said, what if we could build an exact copy of a patient that you could cut, that you could suture, that bleeds just like the real thing before that patient's operation? Now, all of a sudden, instead of going in blind, the surgeon would be able to try it. They'd be able to try it 5 times, see what went wrong, see what went right. And then when they do it on you, they're hopefully going to make a lot less mistakes.
Yeah. So we started this entire ideation to, creating the prototypes while we were still just students. And we did this, like you said, out of our apartment, out of our kitchen is kind of where most of the early prototypes were developed and the technology was initiated. And at that time, we didn't have any access to capital or, we were not, these business-minded people that knew exactly what we were doing. So we just started very small and did reach out to physicians and surgeons that we, basically ran into every single day in the medical center, and sort of bounced the idea around personalized medicine and in surgery in the operation room. What if they had an opportunity to practice their upcoming cases, the challenging ones at least, before they were to operate? And when we were doing this digging, we learned so much. Like, obviously, there's so much innovation in the Texas Medical Center. A few years ago, one of the innovative rehearsals for a pediatric, or actually a in utero procedure, was developed at Texas Children's, where they took this basketball and then they stuffed it with a chicken, and then they planted
So the basketball was supposed to be the uterus and abdomen of the woman, and the chicken was supposed to represent the fetus. So they're trying to figure out, how are we going to do this surgery? Let's go into this basketball and let's try operating on this chicken. Well, that's better than nothing. Right. But that's a long ways away from doing a surgery on a live fetus.
Right. But nonetheless, when we read that and when we saw things happening, like in the simulation centers, in the medical center, and asking and talking to residents and fellows and even surgeons that train these trainees, well, it seemed that there was a need. And this is the reason that doctors at Texas Children's were creating this basketball chicken hybrid
Figure,
thing that was
right.
actually nationwide covered, and it was like on national news actually. And when we talked to them, we were like, well, do you think there is a need to do something better? And 100% of them said, yes, we need something. So that was sort of like the fuel that got us really going. And we knew that this idea, you know, even in the early stages of its development, was going to change and have a huge impact on healthcare.
Yeah, makes sense. And so it's mostly primarily obviously working with polymers, right? Or is there some sort of natural, what are the materials you're using to come up with the actual printing of these models?
Yeah, so the models are made in tissue mimicking materials, and those are soft polymers, much softer than plastic, which is what traditional 3D
Sure.
printers can do, or even resins that are flexible but not really, you know, surgically operable.
Yeah.
And so they are silicones, but they could be also hybrid, or they could be, you know, synthetic water-based polymers like hydrogels, or oil-based polymers like oil gels.
So what we're really talking about is the difference from this, which was 3D printed in PLA,
Yeah.
and this,
Oh,
which was made
wow.
using Lazarus 3D
Yeah,
technology.
so the brain
Yes.
inside the skull, for those who can't see the video, but yes, wow, that's awesome. And look at that, how it can move around. The material itself very much mimics tissue. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
amazing. That's really
Yeah.
beautiful. And you mentioned also earlier, you talked about actually mimicking blood inside of the tissue. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
How is that? How is that done?
Yeah, so the way we do it is, it's sort of complex, but we analyze the MRI and CT of the patient, right? So in that scan image, when we identify the blood vasculature, we create the CAD for it, or the computer aided design for it, right? And then when we produce the models, or the patient specific replicas, we leave those as sort of hollow cavities.
Ah,
And then,
yes, yeah.
right, so then you can flush in fluid, pressurize arteries and veins, and do
Wow.
all kinds of things with them.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That is really neat. And so of course that's just taking it to the next level of actually having something where if they cut in, maybe they see they've gone too far, if they hit some sort of blood or not, or I'm sure there's a bunch of different applications. Obviously I'm not a doctor, but I could see how many things would come up with having the blood in there that would be so amazing to learn from. So wow,
Yeah.
that's
Absolutely.
awesome.
Especially if, you know, if you cut into a carotid artery and you get a 2-foot squirt of blood that hits you in the face, even if it's on a model, that's not something you're going to forget.
No,
So,
yeah,
so capturing that makes a really compelling training experience and practice experience for physicians.
Yeah, so talk about that. Like you've been doing these programs for a while, and you've been actually performing these, you know, sort of trainings. What are some of the typical, I guess, you know, tissues or organs that are used? We saw a brain there. I know you have a brain behind you, so that must be one of the more typical ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are those typical applications, you might say?
Yeah, we're focused in genitourology. So we make a lot of models for patients with kidney cancer, or trainees that are, you know, learning robotic laparoscopic surgery techniques using the Da Vinci robot and have never done it before. So it's a non-human platform for them to practice and get their hands wet first before they do it on patients. And then also for PAs, nurses, you know, pre-med type, you know, medical professionals that want to learn more basic skills like suturing, or, you know, port placement, or catheter placement, sort of like their traditional everyday run-of-the-mill type things that if they do it wrong, it causes pain to the patient, or it's uncomfortable for the patient. And they just want to polish their skills and become better. Then we built models for those procedures as well.
And this technology is quite extensive. We do things we never would have initially thought of. For example, we recently, in collaboration with Anna Rojas, launched a product to help expecting mothers learn how to breastfeed. So there's actually particular techniques for how you express in order to, get proper milk flow.
Yeah.
And it's hard to learn those if your body isn't yet at a point where you're breastfeeding. And if it is, it also might be something that a lot of people would be more comfortable doing on a model.
Sure.
So that's been a really exciting product.
Yeah. So these are like sort of like polishing your skills or developing skills as somebody that's new to these areas. But then on the flip side, we also make very, very complex models for very, very experienced physicians that are doing some of the world's most complex surgeries. So in thoracic surgery, in cardiology, in neurosurgery, where the difference is between life and death. Those are the cases that we can at least help the physician through creation of these models where they can use it as a visual aid or for communications between their teams or with the patient, and then also for surgical rehearsals.
Yeah, how rewarding. I mean, that's what it all comes down to, right? Is actually helping both sides, helping the patient, obviously, because you make a patient specific, whatever it is, model, anatomic model that you're making, but also, yeah, the doctor who has to go in there and actually figure out maybe something new, because everyone is specific, and every patient is a little bit different. So the process is going to be that, it's not going to be the same every time. So to be able to come in beforehand and print something and look at how to do that, that's just, that's beautiful. It really is. I mean, that's so rewarding as a job and as a development team to go through that, working with people out there. So I'll say thank you very much for what you do. This is very inspiring in general. I mean, giving back to the community is huge, and being able to do that every day in your job, how rewarding. That's really awesome. Now, the 3D printer itself, like what is it doing? What does it look like? It's your own proprietary technology. Is that correct?
Yes. So the 3D printers, of course, there are FDM and SLA printers that can do resins and plastics like PLA, which we use sometimes for, the hard components of our models. The soft tissue part of it is mostly proprietary technology that, the materials are trade secret, and the technology is patented now. It was patented last year. Yeah,
and I think the approach that we're taking is actually very different from most companies in this space. So what other groups typically are looking to do is build a printer and then sell it to someone. And the reason is that's what these companies have done for a long time. That's how they've been successful. And from their perspective, that limits their liability. We don't actually think that's the right model for hospitals, because in order to really do this, they're going to need some biomedical engineers. They're going to need people that are experts at all of these different 3D skills, from analyzing patient data to CAD design and manipulation to, let's face it, 3D printers break a lot, so someone needs to fix them.
Yeah.
We think that's the wrong approach. We want surgeons to focus on what they're good at, which is doing the surgeries. So our perspective is we're going to take on all the liability. We're going to do everything. Send us the data. We'll analyze it. You have a chance to, provide feedback and review. But we'll do the analysis, we'll do the production, we'll send it to you in a box, and all you have to worry about is rehearsing your surgery.
So let me ask you something about that real quick. I'm sorry to cut you off, because you hit on something that's really ringing a bell for me. You must get in a lot of circumstances where it's a rush, right? Something's happening. A lot of things are emergencies, obviously, and to get an anatomic model might not happen in the right amount of time. So what do you see as like that time period of turnaround where you can get something? I'm sure it depends on the application, like everything else, but is that a real specialty you must have as far as the time to get that back to a customer? What does that look like?
Yeah, so most of the time, the surgeries that we're creating models for patients, let's say they have some type of cancer or they have a aneurysm, these things are planned out well ahead of time, and they're scheduled at least 2 weeks in advance. So, but nonetheless, we can create the model within 24 hours and then overnight it to the physician, and they would have it within 2 days time. So normally that works out. So far we haven't had any issues. We had a situation where we received a request like on December 31st for a surgery that was scheduled on January 4th. So that was exciting.
Yeah.
There was another case. Yeah, so you're absolutely right, Adam. This wouldn't be applicable if like somebody's heart stopped and like you're in the emergency room and you got to get them back. It's not applicable for that type of
not yet.
situation. But we have had cases where literally a physician handed us a CD with the patient's data at like 6:00 p.m. And within 16 hours, I think it was like 10 a.m. the next day or something, they had a model in their hands that they were operating on.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was getting to. I'm sure there's been a lot of those pinch cases because everybody wants something yesterday. And so I'm sure you come across those more than not, like, okay, we need this now. Well, let's talk about exactly how long it's going to take. And if that will work, you go from there. But that's just amazing on all sides of it. It's a beautiful thing. So I'm sorry, what were we going to say before that, Smriti?
I was going to say that, we worked with physicians early on to understand their pain points and then to identify what solutions would be accurately able to, address their problems instead of just creating something and then hoping that it's going to help them. We actually work directly with them early on. So we have created now a platform that has been refined and iterated and is ready for people to use, and people have been using them and find value in it versus, expecting the physician to do all of the analysis and to do all of the troubleshooting and technical, aspects of 3D printing, and 3D printers break all the time. So either they're doing all of this themselves or they're paying people to create a facility or hiring the staff and the equipment and like the management and all of that. So I think that it's just more capital intensive for them to do it that way versus order something on a need basis and then just, not really have to put in a lot of effort other than share the data and then actually do the surgical rehearsal. So it's a more streamlined process.
No, that's a smart business case right there to do it like that. That's really good. I mean, there's so many things that can be mitigated that they don't have to worry about the doctors. That's a lot. There's a lot of service that goes into it. It sounds like you also are supplying the team of engineers who could take a look at the part from start to finish and work with the customer that way.
And that's key because we are in healthcare. We consider it our duty to make sure that every step of this process is as accurate, is as standardized, as precise as possible. And honestly, I feel like if we were to, sell a machine to someone else, there's a much higher probability of an error, right? If we do everything in-house, we have full-time biomedical engineers where their only job is to make sure this is done right. They're going to be the best to make sure that this technology really grows and is used appropriately.
Yeah, and then the other problem is that the other commercial printers can't actually do what we do. So, I think that's one of the biggest challenges for people to try and adapt this themselves is they don't have the technology.
So now that you've developed this technology, I guess always the question is like, what's next? What are you trying to do that you would like to see happen with the technology?
Yeah, so the two biggest challenges in healthcare and health tech are FDA and billing, so reimbursement. So those are the two hurdles that every biotech, health tech, healthcare company has to overcome. So the first one, which is the FDA regulatory hurdles, we're actually making great strides in that area. So Jacques actually just submitted our FDA 510K earlier this year, and we are currently under review. We've had a few follow-on meetings with them, and things are really moving very well.
Way better than we expected. When we started out, we were so worried regarding the FDA, and we just wanted to make sure, everything was perfect. And when we've talked to them, they've been extremely friendly, extremely helpful, and all of their feedback has really been constructive and coming from a place of helping make sure this is as safe, as repeatable, as reliable as possible. So and they've really helped us actually accelerate our approval. We just submitted a couple months ago, and we didn't even think we would have heard from them by now.
So instead of like being out there to get us or like trying to be a hindrance. They've actually been an advocate, and they've been completely, helpful. And that's very surprising, but very positive.
No, that's a good point, because medical qualification obviously takes a long time. The certification things go through. That's a big process. And when you're dealing with the FDA, they're at the pinnacle of that process of making things very, very patient safe, making it safe for the patient, making sure what's going to happen is something that helps and doesn't hurt. So that's a lot of stringent processes and qualifications to go through. So one thing that I've seen in the past too, and you were kind of mentioning it there, is that there's been I saw an hindrance towards 3D printing, or it's not been the focus with a lot of people for quick qualification, you could say, or there hasn't been a lot of procedures in place or history of it. So there's no way to do things a lot quicker. But I've seen that shift in the last 5 years, and you've been right along with that. So maybe talk about that. Like, what was it like before, like going through some of those qualifications to the way it is now? Yeah.
So earlier, it wasn't even clear whether or not this required FDA approval. There was some guidance documents that were sent out by the FDA. I believe it was in 2017, 2018.
Yeah.
So we'll say in 2018, which is really where we first learned for sure that this did need to be FDA approved. And the reason is, if a clinician is going to base a surgical decision on one of these models, then the FDA considers that to be a diagnostic device, which makes sense. That is different though, for example, in Europe. In Europe, no FDA or no equivalent medical approval is required for this type of model. We are really happy, though, that this type of approval is required, because fundamentally, we're all on the exact same page, and we all are looking for the same thing as the FDA. We want to ensure patient safety in the most rigorous way possible. The other thing that's great about this is that it provides a pathway for reimbursement. So when you get a procedure done at a hospital and it's a medical device, if you have insurance or Medicare, they're typically paying for it. And that's what we want to have, so that this technology is really available to the American public in a broad way.
Yeah.
I believe you had asked about, I'm missing part of your question.
That's all right.
I think he was saying that before, people didn't see the utility, or like didn't recognize.
Yeah, they didn't know how to deal with 3D printing.
Yeah. Well, I think now over the last few years, that has really changed. Especially in healthcare, because even, as some of the top hospitals started learning more and seeing the value of 3D printing, and more players got involved, both from the commercial side as well as the private sector, and started engaging with the government. It kind of kickstarted this whole thing, where the FDA ended up working with the American Medical Association to create those guidelines that I was talking about. Yeah. And not only that, but they actually implemented billing codes already in 2020. So that's like the next chapter of what the future holds, where these models, where we envision these models will become standard of practice, where a physician, if they're operating for the first time or the first dozen times, or operating on a very complex or unique case, they will by default do the rehearsal before they operate.
And also, I think the way the FDA has approached this makes a lot of sense, which is that they're vetting the process, not the product. So if you're getting a custom prosthesis built, that's also a registered medical device. And what they focus on are what is every single step of that process, what could possibly go wrong at every one of those steps, and how do you mitigate it? And then every time you build one, you document all of those steps. Right. You don't actually have to submit a new approval for every individual patient's organ. That would be crazy. You would never be able to do anything. Right. So instead, we're just vetting the process in a very thorough, systematic way. And I feel like that's exactly the right approach. The FDA has done the right thing there.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. It's come a long way, and there's been a lot of evolution in even the last couple of years since a lot of the guidelines have come out. And I just see a lot of the collaboration happening, and it's good to hear a lot of it's coming together more than it used to, because I know that used to be kind of like a, almost like a, I don't want to say dirty word, but it was just like, 3D printing, we're going to really have to look into that really deep, and they made too much of a mess of it instead of really going through those processes and just kind of putting them to the side and then stacking up what is known qualifications and moving forward. So yeah, it's exciting, guys. I think everything you're doing is really cool, and I can feel the passion coming from you. So what a great spot to be in. How exciting. What a great company. Lazarus 3D is amazing. So do you guys have any big events coming up or anything that we could point people to? I know the website is it lazarus3d.com. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So at least they could check things out there. Any other events or things that you want to talk about while we have you here?
Yeah, there were going to be a few. They've been postponed.
Before COVID.
Right. Yeah.
So we got selected as finalists for the Startup World Cup, which was going to happen in San Francisco actually this month, I think. And it's been canceled, of course. It's been rescheduled. Yeah, so that was our next big one. I think
that'll be, is it March or May of next year, the Startup World Cup?
Yeah, I don't remember. And then there was the Silicon Vikings competition that we were also selected for, and that's also been postponed. So,
but we are hopefully going to be attending the Bendventure conference, which should be coming up next month, I believe.
Next month?
Yeah, so it's the largest venture conference in Oregon, and there are startups presenting from California, Oregon, and Washington. So it's mostly the Northwest. And we were selected as semifinalists. The finalists have not been selected yet, so we'll see.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good luck. Yeah, it's such a weird, obviously, with trade shows and the turning into mostly virtual events and all that. So we've all had to deal with that, obviously. But I know that you're doing a lot of great things there, and I appreciate your time today. And again, I'd love to check in with you guys down the line to see how things are going, because it is such an interesting field. And thank you for how you're pushing it forward, because this is a very specialized thing you're doing with actually patient-specific procedures and things inside of the medical field that people just aren't supplying that. So it's really neat to see it be pushed forward each time. And I think you're doing a great job with the materials and the process and actually dealing with the trainings out there. So look forward to hearing more from Lazarus 3D. Thank you for being here today, both of you.
Thank you, Adam. You're also obviously doing very cool stuff.
Well, thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for this opportunity. I think that must be so exciting to learn from other people from so many walks of lives, right?
It is. Yep. That is the bottom line, learning more about it and being able to highlight the people that are doing such great things, because I get to meet interesting people like yourselves and learn so much about the good things, the positive things we all could focus on. That's a big part of it there. So thank you for contributing to that and being part of that conversation. I appreciate that, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adam, and have an awesome day.
All right, you too. Take care.
Bye.
We'll see you later. Appreciate everything.
Yeah. Thank you.